my hope is that more and more people are on board with this whole new intro economy.
It is generally 2 to 5 years in the making and 3 to 5 people deep.
How do you believe it's fair for them to be compensated?
The other part is we need systems like you've built with InterStars.
Hey, it's Mike from IntroStars, and today I'm very excited to bring you a very special episode of the Super Connectors podcast in New York. For today, I've got a really special treat where I don't have a super connector as my guest. I've got a meta connector. David Homan. David, so cool to have you there.
Hey, it's David on InterStars. Thanks for having me.
So David, people often use the word super connector as a loose expression, but you've kind of went one level above that as a meta connector, the guy who connects other super connectors together. Tell us more about that. What does it mean for you?
So my entire world is actually to avoid the term meta connector and to not walk around being like, I'm a super connector. Are you a super connector? Because for me, the best super connectors are humble. They listen, they don't advertise what they do, but they hear you right and they make the right intro. And that difference of what makes a super connector compared to a just incredible connector is really the diversity of their network. It's not just the scale, it's can they get to the right intro for the right person in gardening, in fashion, in tech, in sports, all within the span of a few conversations. That diversity and the level of trust, often the tier of trust they have, where we don't walk around saying who we know or who we can get access to. We simply come around to say, what is your purpose? What is your passion? What's your intent? And then the intro we make is the intro somebody didn't know they were waiting for.
So I love that, coming from a place of being humble and really trying to help. That's the most important thing, not bragging about it. So can you tell us more about your journey? How did you become that meta connector, super connector? Being yourself, really. So how did you start connecting people?
So when I was connecting in my 20s, I didn't call it connecting. I just didn't know. I knew it wasn't networking. Like that was the goal, like not networking, not business cards like Gumby in the 80s handing out things. What I realized was that I had a different way of doing it. And that came out of lots of horrible tragedies in my life. I was sick when I was 12, so I missed most of 6th grade, and then I didn't have social skills. And I was this weird thing where I wasn't an introvert and I wasn't an extrovert. I was seeking empathy and I didn't find it most places I went. And then the more diverse I built my network, the more I met people who were incredible, passionate people who all were, with pretensions or not, the most connected person they'd ever met. And I befriended all of them. And by 2015 or so, I realized everyone was calling me, asking me for the intro they couldn't make as the most connected person they'd ever met.
Wow.
And that's what I realized. I could connect connectors to each other.
Yeah.
And because I'm a classical musician in my other life, no one listens to my music, but it is out there. I decided to call it orchestrated connecting.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of my brand. And now what has been a 10-year journey to connect connectors and build a system and a science around the art of the introduction.
That's so cool. And obviously your journey brought you together to be the David you are today, combining your passion for classical music and connecting people, connecting the dots. And obviously your events bring similar people together. And so you're trying to not only bring some people who are like-minded together and connect them together, but potentially inspire more people to join that circle and become connectors, introducers, and staying humble. So
Absolutely.
How do you plan on inspire more people to join that movement? People who are not super connectors, who don't define themselves that way, but who would like to be, or maybe to inspire people to become that?
So to inspire people, I did something that everyone now seems to have done, which is I wrote a book.
Exactly.
It just came out a month ago called Orchestrating Connection.
I just downloaded it. Yeah, can't wait to read it.
So that was with my co-author, Noah Askin, who is an incredible business professor, musician, network scientist. And we wanted to codify not what makes a connector, because books on connectors are very isolating. We wanted to understand what makes somebody belong in a community, have that community be purposeful and intentional. And everything we write about are all skills anyone can develop. Can you make your network more diverse by seeking out that diversity? When you meet people, can you actually be curious and vulnerable, offer something personal, and ask more questions about somebody else that are deeper driving than you have asked about yourself?
Yeah.
And then can you embrace those tenets of generosity and then gratitude and actually act on what you've heard? Anyone can be a connector. Anyone can be part of a community, but to make that community intentional and actionable takes a much different purpose mindset. That's what I'm hoping to keep inspiring amongst the best of us as those connectors, to then have a ripple effect to anyone that wants to have a greater impact than just their own.
Yeah, and your community, orchestrating connections, have specific principles and values which all your members have to abide to, right? And I think that's a great best practice to share those values with anyone who wants to join the community, so they understand what are the values of that community, correct?
Yeah. So when our mutual friend another Michael Whitehouse, introduced us a few years ago.
Yeah.
You didn't know the code that he had to abide by for that intro,
Yeah.
but he had to describe you as an action-oriented, natural giver that he would leave my children with. People find that intimidating, especially those who don't have children yet, and some that are bad parents or whatever it might be. One person they're like, I'm actually a really bad grandparent, but I would still think I'm high integrity. There's this idea of, can you hold the highest standard possible for how people show up around relationships? They don't have to be perfect in every part of their life. I am certainly not, but they need to show up intentionally with each other to give a value that most people don't who are givers, which is being given to. That was how I set up the beginning of what's called my mantra. It's now something everyone could download if they download the book like you generously did.
Yeah.
But it was this idea of say everything that needs to be said. If I make an intro for you that you were seeking out, respond to that person within 2 days of getting that intro. Don't disrespect it. That was value given. Respond with value back. Even if you say, hey, I'm recording multiple podcasts in New York, I'll get back to you next week. It doesn't matter. It's the intentionality of being respectful that's different.
Yeah.
I put it all out there because unless it's all out there, people will make false assumptions or act in a way that they think they can get away with.
Now, you just talked about value, and that's really important, that every time you make an introduction for someone else, you're truly bringing value, and you're going out of your way to help that person using your own network, which you might have built over many, many years and spent your whole career building those relationships. So the real question is, how do you monetize that? How do you put a real dollar value on introductions without damaging that introduction or that reputation or that personal brand or that relationship? And I know you're not a fan at all of paying referral commissions. It's not your world. You truly want to help people without a monetary ID behind it. I perfectly get that. But somehow you need to monetize your events or other things you're working on in your community. But it's not just for it, it's for other people out there making introductions. They bring real value. How do you believe it's fair for them to be compensated?
So I will say it's always fair for everyone to be compensated for the value they have. The biggest mission of my organization is to make relationship value valued. It's not valued because connectors don't actually talk about the value they give. We just give it freely.
Yeah.
So when you find yourself in a situation of making an introduction, talk about how long you've known somebody. Talk about how you met them. Talk about how much you've invested in that relationship.
Yeah.
Or say it's a precious one, because most people will gladly take an intro from you, but they will honor something you demonstrate the value of.
Yeah.
And so the problem is we don't have chief relationship officers. We have these different positions that are subsidiary, like a community manager to a VC fund or whatever it might be, when the core of what drives all those groups are the community. We don't value them to the tier that they need to be. Part of that is that connectors don't demonstrate our value as holistically as we should. But the other part is we need systems like you've built with InterStars that actually say, if you provide this value, we will track it, we will help you monetize it, and it is transparent from the beginning that that is the transaction, even though it started as relational. Just to make that as transparent and clear as you have is an incredible opportunity for people that built that value, but they can't make it all that they do, but they can work towards that with systems that say, if you want this introduction, represent to the person you were asking to help you, that you were willing to honor it. I say honor instead of have transaction because therefore the honor includes the transaction, as opposed to what happens to so many people, which is the intro begets another intro. And when you're 2 to 5 people down in the chain, you as the catalyst, you weren't recognized, even though you started the entire thing that became the transaction.
And I think you put your finger on it. When you introduce 2 people to each other, you never know what the outcome is going to be. And very often, it's a never-ending chain of introductions, which leads to an introduction, which leads to an introduction. And how do you then reward the initial introducer who made it all happen?
Exactly. But I would say it's not a never-ending chain.
Yeah.
It is generally 2 to 5 years in the making and 3 to 5 people deep. That is the layering that I've seen studying this for a decade with thousands of people.
Yeah.
That is basically like the data science of it.
That's very
It's
interesting.
just really hard to see that. It's hard to visualize it because if you make an intro and 6 months later you get another intro, and then 2 years later you get the third one by being brought to a conference where you meet the person, you don't necessarily track how all of that evolved, but the catalyst for it is the connector always.
Yes.
And my hope is that more people see that value and also can embrace that value for themselves.
Absolutely. And my hope is that more and more people are on board with this whole new intro economy where everyone's introducing people to each other, but understanding the true value they're bringing, honoring the introductions they're receiving. And it's a two-way street always.
But the intro economy, that's been the way business has worked forever.
Correct. It's just the term is a new term, but
The term is a new term. That intro economy, that relationship world, we think we're in it.
Yeah.
But it's the way everything has worked since the dawn of business.
Yeah.
We just have been in positions where those of power know people in power, and therefore, because they know each other from what growing up in the South, a good old boys club, we assume that's the only way it can happen. Connectors have evolved as a very incredible skill set that is currently undervalued, but is the reason why every venture firm, private equity firm gets the deal. That's the deal that everyone thought no one else could get to. It's the reason why people raise capital. They don't, because of their relationship strength. It's how that one person that went to college with a whole bunch of other people gets the job and no one else does. But we downplay its importance.
No, it's true. Everything's based on relationships. People you know, the people who've been surrounding you during your whole career, your whole life. But the good news is you can always increase that circle of connections by going to networking events, joining communities of like-minded people who can open those doors for you. And even if you didn't grow up in that environment, you can join that environment. And I think that's the beauty of it. So David, no, you're organizing amazing events. You just released an incredible book about fostering high-value connections and honoring those connections and playing by a great code book, a rule of code. Where can people follow you? What are you working on right now, which is dear to your heart? What's the latest in David Homan's career?
So the latest in my career is waking up stressed at like 3 a.m. and trying to get through everything that I've promised I'll help people with, because I will take every call somebody asks me to do. Right now, my community is a global network in 187 countries. Wow, sorry, 187 cities and 35 countries. I hold events in 10 different cities, including London, where you're based, and New York, where we're recording, as frequently as I can. Besides the book, I have a startup coming out. I have my own advisory firm where I work to scale companies, but everyone can find me several different ways in the world of my selfish musical world. You can say, hey, Alexa, play the music of David Homan, and then you can hear my music. Everything else is a variation of orchestrating connection, orchestrated connecting. I put everything out on my website, a lot on the book, a lot on the startup called Soar Connect. It's all this idea to build a better system. And anyone who wants to connect with me, from a warm introduction, I'll connect with anyone who's heard and wants to listen.
Amazing. Well, I've met amazing people at some of your events, all with a very big heart, where everything's is all mission driven and a higher purpose. And I really love that energy. And I can't wait to go to many more of your events and build a community together.
It's my pleasure. And I'm just honored to be on this podcast between two ficuses. I think it's the evolution of between two ferns.
Amazing. David, thank you so much. We enjoyed our conversation today.
My pleasure, Mike.
Thank you. Take care.